Okay. So I'm going to tell the story of Palm Sunday, which is fairly large. So bear with me as I kind of, move through all of these different pieces. It does it's composed of different religions. So if I get some things wrong, definitely shout out and let me know. But I think basically the way that I think I'll start this is just with a poem, and maybe you guys have heard this in grade school, but it's always just kind of been one of my favorite poems. It's by Robert Frost, and it's Nothing Gold Can Stay. So it was written in 1923, and if you guys know it, you can say it with me. But it starts off nature's first green as gold, her hardest hue to hold, her early leaves a flower, but only so an hour. As leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief, so dawn goes down today, nothing gold can stay. So I think, it's a beautiful way to start this conversation. Because I'd like to talk about cycles and how, as we're moving into a new cycle with nature, and we're talking about these themes of life and death and rebirth, I think we too are moving into a new cycle. And I'll talk about Palm Sunday. So for Catholics and Christians, Palm Sunday is tomorrow, and Palm Sunday is always the Sunday before Easter. Now, Easter is always the Sunday following the full moon after the spring equinox. So Palm Sunday is the Sunday before Easter, and of course Easter would commemorate the resurrection of Jesus. Palm Sunday talks about Jesus' entrance into Jerusalem. And it also starts Holy Week. So Holy Week is commemorating the last week of Jesus' life on earth. So again, Jesus had been to Jerusalem before. He had been on several occasions. But Palm Sunday was a momentous occasion because he was entering into Jerusalem as the Prince of Peace. So instead of coming in on a war horse as a conqueror, he came in, as the Bible says, on a donkey. So he came in as the Prince of Peace on a beast of burden. So the story of Palm Sunday, the reason that we celebrate this is, again, the entrance to Jerusalem, and people, again, according to the Bible, would wave palms and lay them in his path. So Palm Sunday, tomorrow, Catholics and Christians will go into church, and the church will be decorated with palms in order to commemorate the occasion. Palm Sunday is also the last week of Lent. Interestingly, Lent is an Old English word that translates to lengthen. So it kind of all follows along with what we've been talking about here. So I think it's also important to acknowledge the fact that Jesus was Jewish. And the whole reason that he was going into Jerusalem was to celebrate Passover. The Bible tells us that his last supper was a Passover meal. And as Masha had said, oftentimes Passover falls in line with Easter. And this year it's a little bit different because the leap year, something to do with that. And again, if I have this wrong, let me know. Right. But oftentimes, from my understanding, Passover falls on the first full moon following the spring equinox. So it's a really interesting story that kind of just pulls all of this together. The one last thing that I'll kind of mention that I think is interesting, so I had mentioned Lent. So Palm Sunday, so I just got one of these cute little palm trees here, just as my representation. So tomorrow, when we have Palm Sunday, again, the church will be decorated with these branches. and then they're going to be saved. So they save the palms for next year, for Ash Wednesday. They'll dry these palms, and then they'll end up burning them. And the palms are what end up going on for Ash Wednesday. So it's all this really beautiful kind of cycle. The other interesting thing that I'll just quickly say is so Lent it basically celebrates or commemorates Jesus' 40 days of fasting before he started his public ministry. It's an important time, and oftentimes Christians and Catholics will fast during Lent, and Ash Wednesday is the start of Lent, and then we have Fat Tuesday, which is the day right before Lent. Fat Tuesday translates in French to Mardi Gras. So it's just this really interesting kind of cycle. So I think that's kind of the main thing that I just wanted to talk about, and just kind of reiterate how spring and the moon cycles are all bringing us new opportunities. And we have these themes of life and death and rebirth and a fresh start, essentially, that are kind of reverberating throughout the collective consciousness. And I just think it's really beautiful that we can all come together and share what resonates with us, so that way we can, I don't know, just kind of find some comfort in our similarities and learn from our differences. So I guess my activity is a little bit more simple. We'll just cut one of these little palms off, and then we'll dry it, and then maybe for next year on Ash Wednesday we'll have a dry palm that we can burn. So that is my bit to share.
Hey, thank you, Nellie. I didn't know anything about palms.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
And
Yeah.
I'm not saying I know the
No,
answer.
please,
But
yeah.
I was listening from two things that I think the Lent thing, I just want to tie, and maybe everybody got it, and I'm just, but the lengthening, I think what you're talking about is the way our calendar, our cycle calendar, sometimes we need to lengthen, like a dar or leap year or leap month, right?
I think
maybe that the lengthen you were referring to?
So I think my understanding, the way that it's been presented to me, is it has more to do with the lengthening of the days.
Okay,
I think.
gotcha.
I
Okay.
think.
Which is
yes,
okay.
but I mean, I
Yep.
think a lot of this is open to interpretation, and we're still trying to kind of figure out all of the right answers. So
Well, that makes more sense. I just wasn't sure how to connect it.
I'm
And
glad
then-
that you mentioned that, because I probably skipped that little bit. Yeah.
And so I just, the lengthening of what? So that's cool. And then the other thing was that I was thinking, and I don't really know, but you talked about Jesus riding on a beast of burden.
Yes.
And so he didn't ride in on a Saturday, he rode in on a Sunday, which makes sense because he wouldn't ride on a beast of burden on Shabbat. From Friday night, and I think to tag on to what Masha was saying, I think most people know that most Jewish holidays, they all start on the evening at the sunset when you see the first star, something like that. So maybe the reason why maybe that ties together, or maybe it's just a coincidence.
I don't know. So I think really my point was just for you guys to make the connections, because I don't know. I don't know all the answers, but I kind of found these really interesting weaving similarities. So thank you, because I think that's another piece that ties into
We
this
just
whole
stimulated
thing.
the Gracie brain.
No. I think that this is just the perfect comment. Thank
Nellie,
you.
I never knew about that with the drawing of. I never knew that was what the ash was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
really
My
interesting.
mom always used, like the long palms that we used to get in church. My mom always would fold it into a cross.
Yeah.
And then hang it in our kitchen, and then every Ash Wednesday we would burn ours.
Oh.
Yeah, and that would be our ashes. We would also go to church and receive ashes, but yeah, it was, that's how we grew up. Yeah, it's beautiful.
But I think the 40 days is that biblical magical number.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Yes,
It
yes,
is.
you're
It's
right
always
about
40
that.
days
Yes.
and 40 nights and
Yes.
this and that and the other thing.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting because I was just talking to somebody else, and the Mardi Gras in Germany and stuff, it's Carnival.
Yes.
It is
I didn't even want to get into
Bacchanalia.
this because it would have
It
gotten
is
too confusing.
Bacchanalia.
Yes.
I mean, it is so pagan.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
so pagan. And then, from my understanding, is that the Lenten season, you deny yourself like something.
Yes.
You know, like
Yes.
if you love chocolate, you don't have chocolate
Yes.
for
Yeah.
40 days,
Yes.
or sweets, or meat. A lot of people refrain from eating meat, as far as I know, and all that. So it's something to deprive yourself, I guess, to think about Jesus and what he was
And the
suffering.
time of fasting
Right,
and
right.
resistance to
Sacrifices he
temptation.
made,
and-
made for us, and like and it's like an act of devotion, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so by like taking away something that you love and that was a common thing in your life, that you're just like, oh, by allowing myself to reflect on not having that during these 40 days, it's like, how can I then use that time to be closer to God? Instead of eating that chocolate, I'll spend that 5 minutes praying, right? So it was a really beautiful devotional act too, in that way.
She gets that because she denies herself bread for 7 days.
Exactly. So I was just going to make the
God bless you, that's
chain
great.
between Ramadan. So Ramadan is also, you know, a deny
Yeah.
Passover for that week. You know, no
Yes.
all kinds of different foods that you're not allowed to eat. So it's just sort of one time a year when you really deny yourself and you have to think about other things, whatever it is, whether it's whether it's other people are hungry, whether it's, you know, I'm gonna, you know, it's sort of a way of reaching a different place in your consciousness or whatever. So it's really interesting that so many different religions have that. You know, it's it's a theme. Yeah.
One more symbolism as I go with the palms is that, and you could, but Masha could talk about the lulav, but also that we all wove together the willows today. You know, so there's all. Yeah, you can go nuts with all this symbolism. I have to go.
Bye,
Stephen,
See
thank
you at the
you.
next festival.
Right, and now would you like to cut one?
Yeah.
Before,
Alright.
Which one do I cut? Somewhere in the middle. So that way it's like hidden.
Sorry. Bring it.
yeah, so there's in Sukkot, in the Harvest Festival, there's also a palm leaf.
Oh.
And there's a couple of a myrtle, palm, and there's a third one I'm forgetting, that are
Yeah.
woven together and that you also keep, like, and then there's this thing like a lemon.
Wow. That's so interesting. I had no idea that all these things are interconnected. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. That's amazing. All right. Well,